do that just last because I want to get through some of the nuts and bolts of the new Biosketch, but I still think that their opinions are heavily reliant upon them throughout the session. So I do want to encourage you to ask questions as they come up, but hopefully throughout the next hour we'll address everything you wanted to know. Yeah, come on up, Paul. And more on the new Biosketch. And before we start, I just want to put a plug in for next month's K-Club. For those of you who came to last semester's K-Club on Becoming the Boss by Boss, we're going to be doing part 2 next month, so that'll be a good session for sure. So we're here to talk about Demystifying the new NIH Biosketch. And those of you who are able to either attend or watch on the recorded session that was in School of Public Health about a week and a half ago, that was really great, and digging in and diving down into the nuts and bolts about where to find the forms and if you're a fellow versus faculty and those kinds of things. We're not going to repeat that today. I do have an appendix at the end of this PowerPoint, which we will be sending out, so you'll have access to these slides and all of those links. I do have a special thanks to our K-Club sponsors, the Emory Plus Children's Pediatric Research Center, as well as Department of Medicine and ACTSI. And especially for today, this Biosketch is so new, we had to have a test kitchen. And so Gary Miller and Adrian Schwartz in School of Public Health were very instrumental in that, as was Janet Gross. He has given us his Biosketch that he spent a good bit of time on to pull excerpts from to review together today. And I also want to give a big shout out to Sarah Schultz and Lucas May, who just submitted Career Development Awards with the new Biosketch. And so they both did an awesome job with the Biosketch, the new version, and they've shared that with us today so that we can review and see how they've accomplished that.
Tracy, can you make sure the microphone's on?
Can you hear me? Cut louder? Is that better? Okay. Okay, so big disclaimers. As you know, this is very new. So even though the instructions we're going to present to you today are accurate, interpretations and opinions are just that at this point. Based on experience and educated guesses, we've assembled a really fantastic panel that I'll introduce in a moment, who have been in this business for a long, long time, have been on both the grant application side of things as well as the reviewer. So they can really tell us what they would think and what they're going to be viewing these things as when they review grants. So I think it's going to really be visible, but this is uncharted territory. As we go through cycles of submitting grants and getting feedback, this may change. So this is a snapshot in time. So today, just briefly, Saul Carpin, Val McCarthy, Gary from School of Public Health, Russ Price, Department of Medicine, and Paul Spearman from Department of Pediatrics. And we'll pull from their expertise throughout the session today. So I probably all know what an NIH Biosketch is, but just to make sure we're on the same page, it's this highly formatted component of a grant application that enables reviewers to evaluate the qualifications of the PI and the whole team. I think one thing that I really want to make clear today is even though usually when you have your grant reviewed, it's primarily reviewed by maybe 2 or 3 people, the whole review committee will vote on your grant and what the score will be. And so the rest of the people, even though they don't read your grant application from cover to cover, typically they'll look at your Biosketch and your specific aims page at a bare minimum. So one may argue that the Biosketch, in addition to the specific aims page, is one of the most important pieces of a grant application. So it behooves you to spend some time on this. And so it's hopefully well spent today. Okay. Is there a way to move that yellow thing? Thank you. Okay. So the sections of the NIH Biosketch today, but only up till May 25th, this is what it looks like. It's got a header, personal statement, positions and honors. These currently selected peer-reviewed publications. People can list up to 15, and research support. The big changes that are coming down are the personal statement. You can do it today, but starting May 25th, you'll have to. New revised instructions allow you to include citations in this section, so that's new. The very biggest change, however, is Section C is being renamed as Contributions to Science. Instead of just listing 15 publications up to 15, it'll be more of a narrative including publications, and oh, by the way, you can put a list into all your publications, so it's a lot less limiting. So this is the new NIH Biosketch is going to look like as of May 25th and what we're here to learn about today. So why? Why are we doing this? Sally Rocky, who is the NIH Deputy Director for Extramural Research, when this change first came out, she posted a special rock talk talking about helping connect you to the NIH perspective. So here's just a couple of excerpts from what she posted that day. She said that she and her team really thought that this new format allowed you to emphasize your accomplishments instead of just putting down a list of publications. Really, it would help redirect the focus of the reviewers and the community rather than focusing on just number of publications, looking at some other things that are maybe less tangible, give you an ability to explain those sorts of things. And she actually put in the question, one might question whether or not this might have a negative effect on young investigators, but the contrary was true, that the new format will give early career investigators a platform for describing and framing the significance of their contributions, which should help reviewers better understand their accomplishments. So it sounds reasonable, right? So I think the scientific community thinks about this. Let's take. So this is something that actually this is on one of the blogs, and I'll give you the link to the blog if you want entertainment. This is somebody who's Emory faculty. I found his posting on the blog, he's a current study section chairperson, and he's completely against the change. He said it only adds to the subjectivity of the review process and the workload of the investigators and the reviewers. Said, I don't see it as equalizing at all. He thinks it further stacks the deck for the senior investigators because they have years to put together such a narrative. He thinks it's a real waste of time. And, trying to achieve this delicate balance between hyperbole and modesty is just a whole other thing that now a writer needs to worry about. So the bottom line is the objections are just everywhere. I mean, you read through this and it just goes on and on about it's a step in the wrong direction, it's a huge waste of time, it's a terrible idea. And they're like this last one, because it sounds like something my boss would say, the new Biosketch is just another waste of time and should be canceled. You would, wouldn't you? Yeah, okay. So I put the links in here if you would like to go and review some of the lively comments. However, I will tell you, I did find one person who was kind of excited about this. This guy says he's a science fiction and grant writer, and so this new NIH Biosketch should generate lots of new business for me, since he specializes in the sections that nobody wants to write and even fewer folks want to review. So in this one, the rest of the negative comments were definitely heard by NIH. So what it is, they posted this new announcement in December 14, that they would delay it. Okay, thank you so much. So they're not aboard it, but they did delay it until May. That's where we are today. And I'll give you one last comment from one of the bloggers who says it's complete and utter rubbish. No one asked for a delay. Everyone clearly asked for this disastrous plan to be aborted, full stop. I have no more words. So this has silenced the crowd for now. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of advice who has actually spoken by one of our panelists. It's vent appropriately and then get over it, because this is our new reality. So it's really appropriate and reasonable, like these changes, informing program officers, posting on the website, all reasonable actions, because if not doing that, then it's almost learned helplessness. Who knows? People don't like change, so maybe we're reacting to that. But if it really is a bad idea and doesn't work for us, we need to let the program officers and the NIH know. But today, what we need to do is we need to give it a try, because it is our new reality. So that's why we're here today, to refocus our energies and how this can best work to your advantage and help inform those reviewers who are going to read it, and which, as I pointed out, may be the entire study section. So that's why I think our reviewers today are going to be really helpful in that regard. What do reviewers look in the Biosketch? It's really an important evaluation tool, as we said, highly formatted so that they can compare people across the board. You want to make sure you're qualified to do the job, that what you're saying you're going to do is matched up with what you've done in the past, and that it actually follows in a logical progression, that you're ready to do that. They want to see that you're ready for the type of grant you're applying for. Not too junior if you're applying for an R01, or too senior if you're applying for a Career Development Award. They also want to see if you have got the peer review publications and accomplishments that are likely to, it's a past predictor. Are you going to be able to do the same thing going forward? During the review committee would like to add about what they think Biosketches really tell about a person, or do you feel like this sums it up?
Emphasize that they are an important part of the application. We always look at the Biosketch, especially the PI, we now look at everyone whose Biosketch is there, if you're not the primary reviewer or a client reviewer. These are things to look for. Also, they'll be able to get work done as proposed. Also, productivity over the course of a career. And I also look at current funding. You know, or they have $10 million in annual funding. Maybe appropriate, but I look at it because, you know, why are they trying to get an R21? Come on, you've already got $10 million in funding. Why are you trying to do somebody else and get a grant? So we look at those things realistically, and I think that the format will really change much of that.
Okay.
Paul. I would say that I look for connectedness to the grant.
Okay.
And you just say how great you are, but what is it about this grant that makes this patient work for me?
Okay, good. We're going to let's hold that because we're going to really get into what Dr. Carpenter just said in the personal statement section. Yes.
Sorry, I think about one, the second question. Is that invitation for the section of the computer science? What is the
We will get to that, promise. We are going to go over some of the nuts and bolts today. As I said, this is the new format, okay? So we've got the head statement, positions, and honor contributions to science and research support. Today, we're really going to be focusing on the personal statement contributions to science. We will talk about length, content, and all those sorts of things. So in a nutshell, the new changes are changes it from 4 to 5 pages, which is good if you have a lot of contributions to science. There's allowance for listing publications in the personal statement and in this contributions to science section. Scientists to describe up to 5, you don't have to do 5, but up to 5 most significant contributions to science, put a link in to your fully published work, and it also gives you access to a tool to help you build the new Biosketch, which the value of is debatable. So for right now, I just want to focus just briefly on these last 2 points, and I'm going to point to Dr. Miller because he's actually spent a good amount of time really cultivating his Biosketch tools. But before we go to him, just to put in the framework with all this alphabet soup, the way it works is NCI is the National Center for Biotechnology Information. This was originally started as a database for all kinds of a repository for databases and different kinds of tools, mostly for like the genetics community. But what they've done is they've taken it and really built it out to create this My Bibliography tool as well as Science CV professional profile service. So the My Bibliography is where we're going to start with the Biosketches. It helps you, first of all, report compliance in ERA Commons according to the new public access policy, or the old public access policy, and it allows you to put all your publications into a centralized place so that you can basically pick and choose to use them in your Biosketch. Further, Science is a tool within that helps you enter your biographical data just once. You can pull in your publications, put in personal statements, different contributions to science, and it's sort of like a template where you can pick and choose. But I turn just briefly to Dr. Miller because since he has used this, because I know he's got some thoughts on the value of it.
The tool is potentially very useful in this place to track these different contributions and your publications correctly. It's not a panacea because, well, they're constantly updating it. The first version was out was pretty bad. The second version got a little bit better. But for example, one of the challenges I ran into was on my NCBI is that because I'm an investigator on some multi-component grants is provided in T32 or P30 I'm in charge of, it shows up in my NCBI. And there was filtering it, but it's just not as predictable as I would like. So I found using Water is a cleaner way to be look at my publications. And my interpretation of the instructions is that it's a publicly available database. It doesn't have to be NCBI, even though that's what they list. And I think what you need to go through is not expect that these tools to deliver exactly what you want, but they can help organize you and give you some structure to it. But I wouldn't rely on that as a tool because it is very regimented and it won't let you really craft it the way you want to.
It's like from when we were talking about this offline that you can create a Word document using that as a basis, at least as a starting point, and then further refine it.
Right, I would definitely do the work so you can move, edit, and work with margins and things, make sure it's very sharp. This is PDF one, it comes out with fitting, you can't modify it, and it's just a little dirty.
Okay. All right. I want to make sure we touched upon that today. We'll dig now more into personal statement and contributions to science. But before we move on, does anyone have questions about these tools? All the links will be provided to you after the session. Okay. Okay. Looking back at the changes in a nutshell, we're really going to focus on these next two, allowing for listing publications in both the personal statement contributions to science and describing up to 5 of your most significant contributions to science. So the headings, now we're going to focus really zoom in on the personal statement. So the directions that they list now, they're really similar to what they used to be. Describe why you're well suited to receive the award, the relevant factors, including your training, your experience, your previous work, your technical expertise, collaborators, and scientific environment. But now, as in orange here, it shows you may mention scientific contributions to science that are not included in C. So have a whole section of contributions to science, but they also want to say if it's something maybe not as robust. I don't know. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but what can put other things like that in there. So it's not mutually exclusive, these two sections. What you want to zero in on, though, is you may identify up to 4 peer-reviewed publications that specifically highlight your experience and qualifications for this project. So this literature citation piece in the personal statement is brand spanking new. The other thing, just below the circle there, which I'm going to touch upon, they also say, and they always have, that you can explain impediments to your past productivity if you wish, which I'll touch upon in a moment. The personal statement and content and stylistic suggestions that mostly came from Jan Gross, who many of you know and how valuable her insights are. As always, you want to customize this for each new grant application so it speaks directly to your grant proposal. You know, really it does not behoove you to just do something really generic so you can plug it in anywhere you go. You really want to customize this to talk about what Dr. Carpin was saying, like what out this grant proposal is special in terms of what you're applying for, the money you're applying for today. You want to sell your role in the proposed research and speak to the type of funding mechanism to connect it to your goals. You want to be accessible. You kind of want to be likable and show that you're a good investment. So using first person works really well in the personal statement. You want to be aspirational. Show your excitement and passion for your research. It's okay in this section. And if you're referencing impediments, as it was stated at the bottom, you want to be really brief and non-dramatic. I think for those of you who came to the School of Public Health session, Janet Gross made a great point. She said, you don't want to go into too many details. Oh, when my mom was sick and I took 6 months off, because then you don't want the reviewers to get hung up and start criticizing you for the way you handle crises. So just kind of be very general and leave it at that. So for personal statement, length, generally you don't want to exceed 1 page. Depending on the type of grant, you really want to emphasize your role. So the leadership, if it's of an R, the training potential for you to advance, if it's a F2 or if you're a mentor, you need to mention that. And that brings me to another point. If you're applying for a K, I of the K, it's up to you to make sure all of your mentor team's personal statements read the way you want it to. They probably already have a really good starting point for that, but if they don't be shy about suggesting revisions to that. As PI, it's up to you to make sure all the biosketches make sense in the context of your application. And so in this, you also, you don't want to just walk people through the accomplishments or where you've been, because that's up in the header, but you really want to speak to the science and the proposal. Again, just really being customized. So I'm going to walk through just a couple of examples, and then we're going to get the panelists' input. So this is an excerpt from Dr. Schultz. Again, she just applied for a KO1, so a Career Development Award. This is a great example of being use of first person and being aspirational. She says the goal of her research is to investigate the neural and behavioral origins of disrupted social engagement and autism. Her long-term goal is to understand the pathogenesis and improve early detection. And her final statement I feel is really aspirational. She wants to lead an independently funded research program in developmental neuroscience with a focus on improving the long-term outcomes of individuals with ASD. So not just even really what it is about her going to be so great, it's what her impact on society is going to be. So I thought she did a really good job with that. Another example from Sarah Schultz's Biosketch speaks to the inclusion of the the literature in her papers, which, how are you going to do that? But she goes through, and you don't need to necessarily read this whole thing, but it just really talks about her previous work. So again, this isn't in her contribution section. This is just talking about her track record that she came from. And what she does throughout this is she highlights special publications that really create the groundwork and the foundation to what she's now proposing. So that's a really good use of literature in that way. So here is an excerpt from Dr. Miller's personal statement. And this is a little bit different. Now remember, he's professor, so he's much more advanced than Dr. Schultz is. What this talks about is an initiative on the exosome that he's been doing. And one thing that I really want to highlight with this is the instructions say you should identify up to 4 peer-reviewed publications. But what on here is he actually talks about his publications, but also something that I think is really relevant, maintaining the website on the Human Exposome Project. So I think I wanted to highlight this because who knows, as time goes on, maybe you may get criticized for that, I don't know. But also I might argue as time goes on, people might think, oh, this is a really good use of this space.
The instructions say peer-reviewed publications or other evidence of, it is very...
In contributions to science, it does.
Right, I took the liberty.
Yeah.
There. But another point too, like the mention about the personal statement, you mentioned that up to a page, as a reviewer, I would not read a personal statement that's 1.5 page long.
Half page. You have citations though? What about with citations?
Well, a whole page though, that would still be 2/3 page of reading.
Okay, so the text, a half page, you recommend?
That much.
Okay, okay.
My advice is clear and concise.
Okay,
You want to be very clear about what you're saying. You want to be too concise and leave out details that would be valuable. But if you say the same thing in 5 sentences that someone else could have said in 1, then you're just making the reviewer frustrated.
okay. So this is,
It also sets up for the PI and what will be reading.
okay. Okay. It's on.
Okay. I've seen that the personal statements have gotten longer in the last few years. I think they've been, especially when we went from 25 to 15 pages to 12 pages. So it can be used as a part of the whole. So I sometimes see beyond the half page to 2/3 of a page. And I do read because I think it's part of the whole. Don't go over it. That's ridiculous. But let's read the whole thing.
To be sure to incorporate into your personal statement the role you play in that grant. So many times you see people who have, basically, it looks like a generic personal statement that they put in. It applies to just about any grant that they submit as either a PI or a co-PI. Talk about what your specific role on the grant will be in that personal statement.
Okay, so more evidence that really needing to customize it, and I would say expanding that to the other people who are on your grant application, making sure that they also speak to their direct role on that. Okay, comments about the, yes?
For a chair that's very junior, you wouldn't have to take this from a half page. I mean, isn't there more of a burden justifying your ability to?
More with a junior investigator. Is that the contributions of science should also contribute to some of those pieces. So if someone's training position applying for a K, yeah, I definitely read more of it. I would be more do that. But again, the idea of like it shouldn't fill up first a whole page. I mean, because there's that dense writing. I mean, or if you had something where you separated out with little lists or something, but just like one dense paragraph, in order to really identify the key points you're trying to make.
I think I have a couple of questions. Anne?
I was just wondering about the panel opinion on including review articles as not a good presentation.
Oh. I was paying attention to you.
Included review articles under the personal statement or contributions?
Yes, either.
I know that has not been a good idea, but I think if you point out that it is review, it's on it. Just don't try to pass it off as a primary scientific contribution.
But investigator, it does show some status in the
Yeah.
field to be invited to do a review.
Mm-hmm.
Is not relying on that, is that there should be like at least a 5-to-1 to 10-to-1 ratio of primary to reviews overall.
Okay. And I think that, some of these questions, I almost feel like we should get through the contributions of science section before we come back to personal statement, because that's a lot of my questions is how do you balance the two? Like it says you can talk about contributions to science in personal statement as long as it's not something you talk about below. And I'm like, well, why don't you just put that in the contribution? I don't know. But I really do wonder, too, like how do you pick which publications to put in? The review would make sense. And while doing repetition between the two sections, between the personal statement and the contributions to science, would that be annoying to a reviewer, or is that okay?
Territory when it's, I wouldn't perseverate about it. Just make it look good and make it your. That's it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, I think. So you get your grant all written, you've got your personal statement and everything. If you have time, you haven't been doing this at midnight, go back through and think about you're a salesman, you're a marketer, you're marketing yourself, and have that written. You want to have it all be a package.
Okay. About marketing, too. Okay, so moving right along from the personal statement, and we can come back to that, but right now we're going to dig a little bit more into contributions of science. So this is the biggest change to the new Biosketch. So instructions say you may describe up to, you don't have to do 5, but up to 5 of your most significant contributions to science, and for each of those you want to indicate the historical background that frames the problem, the central findings, the influence of the findings on the progress of the application in the science, and your specific role in the described work. So in each of those up to 5 contributions, each of those should be no more than 1/2 page, including any figures and citations. Yes, you heard right, you can put figures in. I'll show you an example of that. And you can list up to the 4 peer-reviewed publications or non-publication research products. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, and should junior investigators be putting in non-publication type research products. And then here is where you put that URL in to your published work. You can use the bibliography one or the Science CV, or you can use, I agree with you, Gary, it leaves it open. It just says you can use one such as Science CV or My Bibliography. As long as someone can click on it, and this one here you can, and it brings up their entire list of works, then that works. Although I tried yours, and it actually brings up a lot of publications that you're not on, because I think they must be tied to the research grants.
On NCBI.
Yeah, this one here did, yeah, so this is the NCBI one.
Right, and I use Google Scholar to find it. Yeah, that's so.
So this is your in My Bibliography. You don't use this one. This is, okay, so yeah, you click on this, and I'm like, oh, this is Dean Jones and somebody else. He's not even on it. It's because of his grants are tied to the work. Yes.
Is because of having with my NCBI. If yours is clean and looks good and giving you the right information, I think that's totally fine. And I'm not convinced, my first grant with this won't go out until April 30th, and I'm going to continue to rewrite my Biosketch as I go through. But now, Google Scholar is better for me than my NCBI. Again, I think for junior investigators, if you have a low H index because you've only been out for a couple of years, you don't want to, draw into that. But you have some really good publications, because it does it in a different order, right? It's doing them by the number of citations. So I think the key thing is finding the one that represents what you're trying to represent.
All right, so let's talk more about the contributions to science. What goes in it, and how should you organize it, and what should you really report? I think that thing about it is absolutely the first step, and that can't be understated. I mean, you really need to dig deep, and it's an iterative process. One thing's clear, I think probably everyone in this room, this is written by Gary, you want to make a contribution to science and humanities. So it should be fairly easy, right? So what you want to do is start by making a list of what you've actually accomplished. Some ideas that Gary came up with in your previous research experiences. What did the team do and what did you exactly do? So, for example, if you've got a lot of middle author publications that you're going to cite and not many first, this is a great opportunity for you to say what your role in that project was. What did you learn from what you did? So really you're weaving together a story about where you came from, where you are today, and where you're going to go. And so you're reflecting on how that work led to the current proposal. Other things that I would like to comment on, just on what you should go into this?
So I don't think everything that you list here has to be relevant to the proposed reviews. This is your opportunity to talk about your big creative moments, big things that you've really contributed that are very creative, whether or not it's related to this.
Okay.
Obviously, you want to prioritize for space those things that are related to the proposal. But this is a chance to really stand up and say, I did things 10 years ago that nobody on the planet has ever done.
And speaking to the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, so it might not have anything to do with it, but it's really relevant and pretty spectacular, so you want to cite that.
But, you know, one of the first negative comments that you showed up there was that this is back for senior people. You know, this is really our club, not a K club.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, don't want to dissuade people who are in the K or post, you know, they're thinking that don't you're going to look terrible here. The viewers know what you should see, so don't oversell it. Just do something.
Okay.
Would be one recommendation.
This raises a question to from the junior person. You can imagine you can probably make a nice strong two questions, right? Versus trying to stretch for 5 and having that third and fourth become not so strong. But
So the question was, you know, don't stretch it to 5 if you don't got 5. And that's the right answer. You have 1. Yep. I think that's it. It's
And
what you're proud of.
we'll speak specifically to substance versus style, substance versus style and volume. And Gary's got some great recommendations in that. So I think as reviewers, you'd probably agree with that. Yes?
Sorry, another technical question. So in the old format, actually, we can list 15 pages.
Yep.
In the new format, we can only list 5 in statement, 4 in contribution.
So it's going to be 4 in personal, up to 4 in personal statement, and up to 4 per each 5 contributions. So if you had 5 contributions, personal statement, you could have up to 24. Did I do that right? Yeah.
Totally favorite thing.
Not according to Sally Rocky.
Yeah, but I'd say if I saw a junior investigator that had 2 really nice contributions that were a higher quality than the senior person that had 5, I mean, I would see that as a high level of quality. So,
but for me, this is terrible. I think you are the first one okay work, yes, okay, people give you the leverage. But anyway, but for the new career, they will come up competing with how do you
So you, Dr. Kwan, you're saying as a mid-career scientist, you're feeling like people take pity or be easier. Sorry, I'm not really a career scientist. Be easier, and then the more senior full professors will already automatically have that. But the mid-career where you're going to have more people think there's a higher bar. I mean, I think that's.
I don't want to take too much of time, but my thing now is when I review a paper, even if the person part of the paper in the 2 and 4 and 5 on the topic every year, I will give this person is good doing the solid work. But in this new format that only 5 and 4, we can only have time to show the stellar publication. There's no place to show solid publication in a track record.
yeah, but you do have the narrative of the contribution, so you can say, you know, below the highlights of it, there's 26 other papers on that topic or something that are it's in that citation section. But you have to use the language of those narratives to explain your point.
So to that point, here's an example. I got a couple examples of contributions to science, and so this one is actually Gary's, and it's pretty short, and I think that one may argue that this is a really good format to use, although not all of the examples I'm going to show you do. But in this particular contribution to science, he talks about that he's instrumental in defining the role of plasmid membrane monoamine transporters for like a response to psychostimulants, and how the work that he did as a postdoc, the foundation, and have had an influential understanding of the function of these transporters, and then he lists 4 publications that speak directly to that. So I thought that was a really effective, to the point use of the contributions to
And
science.
that's the only place I listed the middle author publications.
Mm.
All the other ones are first or last.
Okay, and strategically, why did you decide to do that?
It's just very influential papers, and so even though I was just a co-investigator, they've been cited a lot, they've been very important, so that was an important thing. I played a role in that early on, but it was the only one that had the middle author ones.
Okay, got a couple questions.
But you don't specifically say what your role was.
Yeah, he's
It's
just,
not done yet. And this is my draft of my bio.
oh, but that's a great point, will you?
I will go, my next day, April 30th, so, I've been working on it already for a few weeks. I'll probably revise it 5 or 6 more times. And for example, every time I get feedback from these things and other, colleagues, is that you think about how do I sharpen these things up.
You just helped him.
That's feedback, yeah.
But it doesn't, I mean, you do 4 publications, and this should roll on each one, I mean, that's, right, and kind
Yeah.
of gets really nitty gritty.
But it could be like, the contribution technically, like I did this technique on these various projects.
Great.
Asking for background.
Background topic, okay.
This one I don't see exactly.
Yeah. So,
You said the background about why
oh. That's a great point, and I wonder too, so that you're right, that's what the instructions say, like, tell us why this is important. But I wonder too, like, can you think about who the reviewers are going to be? And if they're going to know that, maybe you don't need to put in? I don't know. Yeah.
I find we should know something about.
Yeah.
I don't think you can risk that. You just don't know who your reviewer is going to be. You've got to put a little bit of reason that prior work is important. Right.
And background about that topic, not just your own work. Why does anybody care about whatever it is?
Right. Put context. Yes. Yes.
So one other thing, a word of caution I would add here is that make sure that the publication that you pick, match what you in terms of the actual contribution. Don't overstate your contribution, don't understate it. You say that you were the first person and this was the next great, the next big in this field, and yet in a low impact journal, it contradicts what you're saying in your just be careful about making sure the statement matches.
That's great. Comment or question?
I have a question on contribution science of publication or
It'd be up to 4, so I interpret that to be any. Yeah. I what you have, but I think that it's the background, the way that you describe it, and your interpretation of where it fits in the field. And I would agree with Price. If you overstate it, that shows you might have some judgment. But if you put it in the context and said, this is really good, and maybe it was a contribution to science because it sets you up to where you are today. Maybe it didn't even influence the entire world, but as long as it sets you in the direction, I would argue that that's a good use of that space too.
I still think it's not very fair to juniors in general, which is the main critique against this. Because as a senior investigator, it's not hard to do some of these sections. You have multiple areas that you might have been investigating over a period of years. You just choose the best, most impactful publications from each of those areas, and that's what you put in there, and it's not so hard. But I don't know exactly how it's going to come across with junior and mid-career.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we should keep NIH up to date and on our experiences with it. Yes.
about the 5 papers in the personal statement and 4 papers in contribution, we generally suggest to be separate on everything we should do, because right now the real estate is
let me speak to that just for a minute. The instructions say that the contribution, or the paper, I guess, should be separate, but I don't think that people are necessarily following that, and I think it's not cut and dry. And would you criticize a Biosketch if it repeated publications between the personal statement and the contribution section? Yes. Okay.
So the real actually for the personal statement, try to make more growth or contribution or entry or contribution, and then you usually sign district to the grant. Would that be?
No, it's the other way around.
The other way.
The personal statement should be more about the current grant and why you're well qualified for that grant and what your prior work leads up to that. And then the major contributions are made other than.
Example up, because I think that this speaks to what Ann brought up before and Dr. Greenbaum about really framing out why this contribution was important. So this is, again, an example from Sarah Schultz's Career Development Award. So she really talks about a theme of her research and how the reduced interest and engagement in social stimuli is the defining factor of autism and a likely contributor. Little is known about what these individuals perceive. And so I think this is a great example of really framing it up. But you'll notice it's a lot longer. And so I think that that's kind of the looking at Gary's, it's pretty short, to the point, concise. This definitely expands out more. Although I think that reviewers, I mean, if you already know this, would you be annoyed by that, or would you just pretty much kind of skim it? Maybe that would be the end result.
It's a great example, and I love that there's only 2. What more do you want? A really high impact paper and a patent. That's fantastic. You don't need to have.
Oops. Yeah. And I think this up here too, because of the patent. It doesn't have to just be publications. This patent is really important. It shows that Dr. Schultz is a frontier researcher in this, and really laying the foundation for the direction of this research. Is a great example. About this contribution.
People less worried about it, to be honest. Reviewers, there's going to be 40, so at the end of the week, I'm going to be on the K review. So there's going to be 40 reviews. Every time something's rolled out, you're going to get a lot of different ways. So the first couple cycles, review committees are really going to be forgiving. Don't use this as your reason not to submit your grant on time, okay? So that's number one. And number two, you do your best shot, and know that there's redundancy in the application. Read your personal statement at length, or you say, I'm doing this because of, X, Y, and Z. And I wouldn't worry about it so much for the first go-through. The senior people should have a higher bar, right? You guys see biosketches there that are just generic things. So whatever you can do that makes the best foot, at least my opinion, is the best foot forward for the first couple cycles. I think that's great. And then we make back to you to say, what did we see and what are the ones that resonated or didn't resonate? And quite honestly, you know how much time is that a review for grant anyway? People spend a lot of time talking about it. Just want to really be a nice visual light as you someone's application. More to it, of course, but really try not to push it.
Add on to that, I really like what you just said. I mean, one of the things that the grant writer has to keep in mind is giving the words to the grant reviewer. If they're going to talk about things, absolutely. And if you can make it easy for the reviewer to believe that you're the thing since sliced bread, you got points.
Okay. I like what he said, because maybe we should make a commitment to come back together in a year and share with each other what actually worked and what didn't, so we can learn from each other for the biosketches. Another example of a contribution to science was by J. Lucas McKay, who's a biomedical engineer. And I like this because he actually puts a figure in. And so he talks about one of his research accomplishments is developing these engineering tools and approaches. And so these curves here really illustrate what kinds of data the tools he developed can create. So I think this is a great use of a figure in a biosketch for the contribution to science.
I think the instructions, I recall something about not list websites. I think there's a concern about losing the honest nature. And that was just the personal statement, the other part of it, but that's why I didn't put the UL, like it said not to do that. And so you follow the instructions, you have to look at them yourself to make sure you do it.
Oh, for website. Oh, it has to be publicly, yes, this is yes. I
Right,
know what
but
you
you
got.
mentioned about not having just other URLs because
Yeah.
it's a way to point in a bunch more information, and they said not to. So if you care, if you violate a very clear rule, that means that they could throw your Biosketch out and that whole thing.
Right, that's true. Would they do that, do you think?
Not the first.
We'll have to see how this evolves, but I would react negatively to too many figures.
Okay.
You're already looking at a bunch of these tiny little figures in the research plan, and to have to look at them again in the Biosketch, that's
Okay.
Particularly a detailed one like
Yeah.
And a URL link is not a workaround for the lack of intent. Meaning that don't expect someone to click on that and read it. They might, it's unlikely, because you want to read this in a place where you can actually click on it and read it, and you want to, and most reviewers are actually not going to do that. So it's really what's written up here, and whatever that you think someone's going to read it at that moment, I would propose that we start out that way. Especially, junior, you're not going to have a lot. So make sure that whatever's written up here.
Mm-hmm. So would there be any situation where you think a figure would be appropriate and then just maybe one panel or something like that? Or are you just saying you would think as we sort of start going down this road to not do it at all, in your
I
opinion?
don't know. Let's see how it plays out. I'm just saying my reaction is negative. I know I'm already looking at those because.
Okay. Any predicted
So I just did
reaction?
mine last night.
Okay.
Just for you, before training grants. I put in very easily understood figures, not requiring a legend, something really just kind of graphical to explain. I put it in the text up above. That's it.
Okay.
Do you think as a figure, it would be useful to put your working context with the field as a timeline of some sort? I don't know if that can be done geographically in a fairly simple way, but try and illustrate you made some contribution and then opened up the field and illustrate some things that follow in a graphical sense.
Paul's comment is very telling. Your goal is not to ignore your viewers. So you need to have a very large focus group, probably like an N of 1,000, to know you're not going to annoy somebody. So I think keeping it more traditional is the route until we learn more about this.
I also want to point out that Dr. McKay put in in for C, a data set, which I think is a relevant way for his type of work. So it's not just publications. Here's a good one, too. So this is, again, Gary Miller, professor. So he will show a slide in a minute to talk about that junior investigators should maybe be more research-focused contributions to science. But he's more senior, so he put in this editor-in-chief of toxicological sciences. And he also happened to have published there. He put that in. You'll also notice that this is number 6 on his. Only about 5, so he's really developing this out to pick and choose.
Now, and I'm trying to decide which ones are going to use. So
Yeah.
each of these things, they're all like in a test phase right now.
What grant would you use this one in?
A training grant in toxicology.
Okay.
Maybe a center grant that is in that area where it's kind of a leadership piece that's really important. I wouldn't do an RO1.
So a junior investigator should really stick to the research-focused contributions.
Yeah, I think if you have the sort of like associate editor role as a junior person, I would find it as a distraction.
Okay.
Downplay it.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thing I just want to touch upon is publications or other non-publication research projects. So I think we actually already did touch upon this about the figures, maybe kind of steer away from that until we understand what they're really how they're going to be reviewed. And then I think probably what I've heard is the reviewers really care about the publications and how you frame what your role in those were. So other final thoughts on the publications in the contributions to science and how that to the narrative that precedes it? Okay, yes.
Yeah, I don't have a publication for junior investigators that don't have it, and if we don't want to repeat them between sessions, do we want to, like, what would be the priority in the conversation, or?
Yes. We probably don't know, but I was just thinking about this. I like to see the personal statement in that section be really strong. Maybe if you don't have other things to say, maybe just a statement that says, my contributions are outlined in the personal statement. You know, rather than trying to put something in there that's a base report or something that would just distract you.
So time we go around, though, I would just venture to say that repetition would maybe be the better choice than to just try to stick to the rules.
I think it's around months before your proposal's due and giving it to several people and their reactions to it.
So are you just volunteering for that?
Well, actually, in the School of Public Health,
Yeah.
we are, we're offering to investigators
Yeah.
to send it in, and we'll have a panel of people look at it, because I don't know what it's going to be, and I think you need to have, especially for a junior, to have more senior people who sit on study sections just to look at it and say, why don't you emphasize this part more, or put this part over here?
Yeah.
I think the contribution to science, again, that sort of science fiction piece, is creative writing there, and there's different ways of organizing your work, and you should play around with different options when you're going so best.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes.
Along the lines of contribution to science, you've done work as a PhD, and it was in an area completely different from what you did your postdoc in, and you're doing your science in. Put that in the contributions to science, or does it seem like, have no function whatsoever related to what you're doing? You shouldn't, it's just a distraction.
What I commented at Grand Rounds was that the whole idea of this is to solve problems. If you have evidence of solving problems in a different area, I say put in.
Also that seeing how some of these things are rolled out, that part's going to go away for the fellows, that go around the K award. I think it's going to be really hard to make people not feel inadequate who are trying to put that together, because it's such a charged statement, and people are barely out of training. What did you contribute?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Think about it. Yeah.
And that's not fair,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
it's not true. It's all a latent
Right.
component of the bio.
Right.
That's why I say try not to worry too much about it. If you're back, make it as succinct as possible. You have a nice, set of slides that just say, the more you put in there, the more you're going to think yourself. So it's good, right? So I would try not to leave it blank. Right? I think that's probably worse. But, and you really probably, if you spend a little bit of time, you probably have done more than you think.
Mm-hmm.
So I would make sure that you put that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think this is the final part of the talk here. We're going to talk about the sort of the substance versus style kind of thing. Like, do you put a lot in that maybe you're not on shaky ground, or do you really just focus on things that are substantial and you can actually justify? And so I think that everyone in this room would not be subject to this, but it's important to talk about humility versus arrogance. And so, Carl Sagan made the saying, true extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And this is how scientists think. They want evidence. They're skeptical. If you say something in there, it better be justifiable. If you put a paper in there and you're listed as first author, it better show up in PubMed that way. And so I think it'd be tempting for nobody in the room, but maybe some people, to sort of frame it out in a certain way. But if it's not the truth in black and white, then that's going to come back to bite you. You don't want to misrepresent any facts whatsoever. And this is another, a couple of reactions from the Rock Talk that I just want to highlight that really touch upon that. So somebody actually said, let's not ignore the egocentricity that often accompanies ability and talent, but that behavior could be counterproductive. If that person was reviewing the application and they knew something about the person and thought they were not being objective or maybe even dishonest, they'd be poorly disposed to that person. The final statement here is, if this person had their BS meter triggered, they would feel annoyed, which is not a good attitude when reviewing grants. So kind of fine line by speaking well of yourself, but not going overboard. Dr. Miller did touch on this, so I just want to briefly go over the fact that if you are an assistant professor, it's probably 2 to 3 at most, and you want to focus on the research-related accomplishments, not being associate or someplace else. Associate professor, you might be getting into the 3 or 4 significant accomplishments area and then full professors surely should have between 4 and 5. But they've had more time to lead the initiatives, and they could have other contributions like he had with the editor position. Final thoughts, just to wrap this up, I'll get to you in just a second, is just to really read and understand the guidelines about the websites and all that sort of thing. And sketch your accomplishments, dedicate time for reflection, show it to your peers, show it to your mentors, show it to senior faculty, and work with that and just those people and just revise. And there's a question here.
I guess following up with everything that was said, our first in general, reviewers see manuscripts. But on contributions to science, would this be one area where junior faculty can explain, I just finished my postdoc, and this is what I did there, but it's not published. Would you be annoyed if you got it? If it's sort of contextual.
Okay. Question is, is there any place for manuscripts in submission?
I would not use that term, manuscript preparation. What you could say is, I have some really neat findings, which are highlighted in the preliminary data section of this grant or something. Like you could talk about the discovery, but don't use manuscript in preparation. That means nothing.
But then you say you could have a contribution to science that has no, I wouldn't have a contribution without anything.
It might be
Personal statement, yeah.
here if you don't have any publications.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing, I'd be curious what some of my panelists think about this, but if you are author on a paper, but you had a very important contribution that really made that paper possible, I think it's possible to highlight that particular aspect of that paper as a way of sort of highlighting perhaps what you're talking about, sort of way of going around, getting around being the first author or senior author.
If you made figure 3 in a Nature paper, I think that would be great. Right? I mean, I wouldn't be concerned if you were the middle author.
Yeah.
You could say, I did this piece of it. And so, doing it for a high-quality publication, if you have an important contribution, that's a contribution.
And I've actually seen this several times on grants, where someone would list themselves as a co-first author, but then you go and look at the citation, your name doesn't indicate that.
Bad.
Again, that's not a good thing, so be very honest about your appraisal of the role.
The question has been the case for a long time. I don't know if these rules change. They submitted articles.
Yeah, I would kind of tend to lean back to that, yes. Question?
So, second question.
Yeah.
So I guess the personal stand of will say, so far how many research papers, but put into the Google Scholar or any public domain when you cannot direct the reviewer to particular person that you are to be a full list.
So you do put that full list in.
Would you put Google Scholar or my NCBI? That would be allowed. That's correct.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. All right, well, join me in thanking the panel. Oh, and Barbara, do you have quick?
We're able to WebEx this. It's going to be available online. You can watch after.
Because it was so great.
We're all going to be on Twitter, so we have a hashtag.
Okay. All right, join me in thanking our panel. Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
So